What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our SEC football channel.
4-8 season on the field, but another top 20 recruiting class out of Will Muschamp at South Carolina. We got Will Gunter on the line from the all-new early game 107.5 The Game. Will, how's it going tonight? You look festive.
We're very festive.
Nice.
We're ready. A week from tomorrow, a week from today, we'll be taking down this tree back behind me and getting ready for New Year's in 2020.
You're going to take down the tree a week from tonight?
Maybe. Who knows? We might get bored. The tree's huge. This tree's huge. I don't know if you can see it. It's a big. You can't really tell. It's a big tree. So we're trying to be fully prepared for 2020, and the kids go back to their mother next week. So we'll be ready to take down the tree and skate on into 2020.
Okay, man. It's get it up, take it down. Christmas is over. Let's move on to the next thing. All right.
It's been up a little bit longer than just get it up. It's been up for a few. It's already fallen over 3 times, so we're ready.
Very nice. It's a good-looking tree, that's for sure. And folks, again, as I explained to Will before we came on, my daughter and I, that's our thing. That's our tradition. And since she's away at college, our decorating has become a little bit later in the season. But you will soon see the Christmas tree behind me as well. Okay. I guess people are a little bit more interested in South Carolina football than my decorating habits around the Mark Rogers TV household. So, Will, this South Carolina class is number 17 in the nation for the second consecutive year if this rating holds up, according to the 247 composite. So another nice class by Will Muschamp.
Well, it is, but I think even under Steve Spurrier, we learned this is about the typical South Carolina class. It really comes down to how you develop them when you get them on the field. I mean, you go back and you look at Steve Spurrier's classes, there was good players. There was a great coaching staff that developed them when they got to campus. You think about guys like Devin Taylor and guys like DJ Swearinger, a guy like Antonio Allen. These weren't highly thought of recruits. These were guys that were developed when they got to campus, and that's what this class is going to be. Certainly there are guys who are difference makers, Marshawn Lloyd, Luke Doty, Jordan Birch will obviously be a guy that everybody talks about. Those guys, the difference makers, have to be difference makers. What also has to happen is you have to develop guys like Mo Kaba, like a Rashawn Lee, like a Rico Powers Jr. that turn into players that played above their potential when it's all said and done.
So, Will, when you look at the class, who really stands out? You mentioned a few names, but if you can outline those guys that are the big standouts and maybe some other guys that you've looked at and based on what you've heard, what you've seen, what you've read that may be under the radar that you really like.
Well, I think obviously the guy that kind of stands out is Jordan Birch. He obviously is the big time prospect, and watch out there. I got someone holding the camera. It's look good, but obviously Jordan Birch. Stay out of it. But Jordan Birch is the guy, the 5-star prospect, top 10 prospect in the country, and that's the guy that we're going to all talk about and think about as the big time difference maker. Marshawn Lloyd, the running back from DeMatha Catholic in DC, is certainly a guy that they'll count on to start, if not make an instant impact, pretty early in the season. And then you think about the quarterback situation with Luke Doty coming in, and with Jake Bentley transferring out now, Ryan Helinski, we'll see what happens with the Carry-On Joyner, but certainly Luke Doty, the quarterback room is a little bare. And so with all that in mind, how does Luke Doty fit into the situation? Those are your 3 difference makers. Luke Doty, more of an athletic quarterback. Certainly, again, Jordan Birch, a top 10 prospect, and Marshawn Lloyd, a guy who is one of the top 5 running backs nationally. So there's your difference makers. You ask about the guy who I think will be intriguing, Eric Shaw, hybrid tight end / linebacker out of Alabama, is a guy that Auburn today tried to get to push back his commitment not to commit in December. Eric Shaw is a guy who could play tight end. He could also play the buck linebacker spot, and certainly that's a position of need for South Carolina, the ability to rush the quarterback. So Eric Shaw, maybe the underrated prospect in this particular class.
Shaw is rated the 16th rated athlete in that category, according to 247, and 17th rated player in Alabama. It's a 4-8 team. And usually that's not a whole lot to go on the recruiting trail. But Will Muschamp still brings in the 17th rated class. Now, of course, we've got to put that in SEC perspective, which is the number 8 class in the SEC. And for a second consecutive year, it's number 8 in the SEC. It's number 17 in the nation as it stands right now. So what do you think he's telling recruits out there after winning 4 games that he's still able to bring in that kind of haul?
Well, I think that one of the highlights of having Will Muschamp as coach is the ability to build relationships. And certainly they lost some guys during the summer. Javon Cohen ends up at Alabama today after decommitting from South Carolina and going to Auburn. Isaiah Walker was another offensive lineman that ended up going to Florida. But, the crazy thing is that as the season progressed from September to December, and then you had the Board of Trustees comments about the job security of Will Muschamp. You never actually lost a recruit during that period. You lost the guys during the summer. And so with all that in mind, I think it's the relationship that it was built between Will Muschamp and the confidence that these recruits have in Will Muschamp to take the South Carolina program to another level. Then to land a guy like Jordan Birch today, who is down to Georgia, obviously a playoff contender. LSU, who's in the playoff. Clemson in the playoff. Alabama, who's just on the outside, is 13th in the playoff rankings. And to choose South Carolina, I think speaks to the volume of which these recruits connect with Will Muschamp and believe in what he's trying to do with the school.
Will, you connect with the fan base as much as anyone on a daily basis. How many of them are being level-headed about, we talked about it all off season. The schedule was brutal. And we kept talking about, well, if things break just right, maybe they win 8 games, but most likely it's going to be more like 5 or 6. And it's just a brutal schedule. And it broke just about as badly as it could outside of the game, of course, in Athens against Georgia. How much are they responding to 4-8 versus understanding what the schedule was, that it just didn't cycle as a really good year for South Carolina? Plus, they're still bringing in top 20 recruiting classes.
That's multiple answers. They were not happy about 4-8. Nobody was happy. There was a lot of the fan base that wanted Will Muschamp gone, or at least the vocal minority maybe that calls into a radio show between 6 and 9 a.m. each and every morning, angry that they're up between 6 and 9 a.m. and having to take their kids to school or doing whatever they do. But there was a lot of people who wanted change. There was a lot of people who wanted change in the athletic department with the athletic director because of the buyout that was given. There's people that are just not going to be happy. I mean, that's the bottom line. Look, Will Muschamp was a controversial hire for the University of South Carolina amongst the fan base. And when in year 4 you go 4-8 and you lose to Appalachian State, and you lose to North Carolina team that's got a new coach, that's not going to make people very happy. And if you're watching this and you weren't there, people understand that the game against Clemson, there was no excitement, there was no energy, there was no belief that South Carolina could pull off the upset. And when those are the things that happen, you're not going to have a happy December. But as I put on Twitter earlier today, I didn't know how excitement was going to be generated for 2020. We were trying to figure that out. Well, they hire a proven offensive coordinator in Mike Bobo. They sign Marshawn Lloyd and Luke Doty. They get the commitment. Right now, it's just the commitment of Jordan Birch. That does create some excitement. So you do see at least a little bit of optimism amongst Gamecock fans now before we can even get out. It's funny. You wrap up the season on November 30th. You couldn't be any lower. But at least as before we can even get out of December, we're halfway back to peak optimism before we head toward August.
Will, in addition to the phenomenal insight and information, of course, you gave us the Christmas tree to add that festive look to it. So it's remarkable. We appreciate you stopping by.
Yeah, the camera angle too was slanted the entire time. It was just the whole thing. It's a Christmas production. We wanted the tree. I feel like I look good this Christmas. It's it's the whole Christmas spirit. So I appreciate you having me.
Knowing Will, I'm guessing you're not paying a whole lot for the production costs and paying the camera person there. So you can only expect so much.
It's true. It's a good point. It's an excellent point. We know the camera. We both know the camera person. You only pay for what you get.
Will, you have a great holiday, you and company there, and we appreciate it each and every time.
Appreciate it, Mark. Take care.